Hello, this is your boy Kenny Braswell, and welcome to 5 Flow, 5 minutes of motivation and not much more. Got a special message for you this week. It is about how we teach our children. I got some great news last week that my youngest daughter was accepted to Kennesaw State here in Georgia. She already got my t-shirt, so I'm really happy about her progress, as well as I am all of my children. But this is just a special moment for her and in our lives. But it caused me to stop and think about some of the things that's taking place in America right now, particularly with our children who are out there protesting, and our children who are involved in the politics of the world, and they're involved in their own lives, and they're involved in their communities. And I just thought it was time to kind of talk a little bit to particularly adults and parents about teaching our children, and just take a moment to kind of think about how we are teaching our children. Long gone is the day of do as I say and not as I do. We do not parent those kinds of children anymore. This is not a day and age where you could just tell children to do as you do. And to a large part, we can't say that because what we do as adults is suspect. And our children see that. And we have to be accountable for our own actions. But teaching needs an element. And so whenever we do it, even with our children, if teaching doesn't have information, then teaching doesn't have anything. But one more thing that is probably more important than teaching having information is that the receiver has to be on, right? And so we know this from days gone past, right? With respect to a radio and a television set and many major appliances, right? That information in terms of the waves of TV and the radio waves and the satellite waves and all these waves that transport communication, all of those things are constantly on. They're constantly in the air. But the only time we can interpret what they are is when the receiver is on. And so if you're a parent and you're talking to a child and they're not listening, it's probably because you haven't paid attention to what it takes to turn the receiver on. And in this conversation, we're talking about our children. And so there's two things that you have to keep in mind when it comes to doing that for our children, right? One is the information has to be understandable, right? And so a TV can't pick up a radio wave, or radio can't pick up a TV wave. They can only pick up the waves that are understandable to them in terms of their receipt. Right? So our children is the same way. And so you can't, I often say this and use this term, you can't speak to our MP3 kids in 8-track language, right? And so they just don't understand sometimes the slowed down language that we present them with as adults. And then the second thing is it has to be memorable, right? And so if you give them information as children, you want them to remember it, because at some point in their lives, you want them to be able to tap in to something you taught them a long time ago, so that it helps them in their lives, right? Proverbs 3:1 says, never forget the things I've taught you, right? And so that's biblically speaking. So when we teach our children something, we want to make sure that our children never forget what we're teaching them. So I want to give you 4 quick ways, right, to do a better job at teaching our children. First one, I just talked about it. Speak the language, right? Speak the language of our children. Make sure that when you're talking to them, you're talking to them on their terms, not on your terms. Make sure that if you're talking to our younger kids, right, that you're speaking age-appropriate language, that you're giving them information in a way that they can receive it and they can understand it. The other thing is make it relevant to their lives, right? And so oftentimes we go into, back in my day when I was doing this, they don't care nothing about your day. You got to talk to our children in their day. The second thing is build it into everyday life, right? And so find the teaching moments. Everything in this world right now gives us the opportunity to use it as a teaching moment. This past election, if you want to talk to your children about politics, it gives us the perfect example and reason to sit down and start talking about politics. In the black community, as we see what's taking place around the country with respect to our children and communities, if you want to talk to them about violence, we're we're in the perfect space right now to talk about violence with our kids. So pop culture offers us a lot of different ways to be able to sit down and talk to our children, right? And so even in the Bible, Deuteronomy 6:7 says, a father's chief teaching is in the common things in life. And so we got to find spaces in the common places in life to teach our children the things that we need for them to learn from us. The third one is make it enjoyable, right? Nobody wants to learn in a boring environment, right? And so when we're talking real slow, our children are bored, and so we have to be able to kind of learn how to communicate with our children and be able to make teaching enjoyable for our children. Oftentimes when they're having trouble in school, because the way that they're being taught is boring, and that even comes to the way that we teach our boys differently than we teach our girls. And so you got to make teaching enjoyable. And the last thing, and I think that this is the most important one, teaching by example, right? How can you expect for our children to do differently when they see you doing something that's counter to the narrative that you're trying to preach to them? In addition to that, and this is a bonus, be careful about helping them interpret what they see on TV. This election, again, is a perfect example of that. And so we talk about truth, and we talk about compassion, and we talk about compatibility, and we talk about empathy and inspiration, and we talk about sympathy and all those things. None of that stuff you saw on TV during the election. And you got to be able to kind of talk about the values that you're trying to place in our children is not what's being reflected in our society right now. But to be better people, to be the better us, we have to begin to start thinking and teaching on a different level. This is your boy Kenny Braswell for 5 Flow. Check us out on blaze1radio.com and Fly TV Fatherhood Today. And I'll see you next Monday. Peace out.